Hi, everybody. Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and today we are, of course, continuing our construction of the Phoenix, Rocketarium Phoenix model that we've been working on. We need to add the back fins now. They're all prepared. There is no like forwards or backwards, so this should be fairly straightforward. We will just, start slapping them on. Same deal as usual. Ooh, my glue bottle is extra stuck today. So we can't do something about that. There we go. Anyway, it shouldn't really. This should go fairly easily, and I would think this should actually be easier than attaching the main fins for two reasons. One is that these are smaller, for whatever that's worth, and two is it should be really easy to make sure that I get my alignment right because I've already got fins on there, and I should be able to see whether or not this is at the same angle as the existing fin. So yeah, I'm going to make sure that I put it into the marked part there, but then I'm going to align it based on whether or not this happens to be in line with the other fin. So same deal as always, 2 layers of glue here. It's probably not, well, actually, I'm not sure. Rockets tend to fall in, well, they fall in unpredictable ways. Sometimes you'll get kind of a tail first approach. Sometimes you'll get just coming in sideways. So this one might take more abuse from the ground than anything else, but we shall see. All right, so I'm going to start at the back, and I'm going to kind of roll up. And there we go. Let's just hold it in place. By the way, you can't really tell how much time has passed here between this video and the previous one, but I definitely let the forward fins completely dry, which is really good because I'm putting a decent amount of pressure on the bottom fin right now, the one that's sitting on the ground. Okay, so that's in place, and it is not lined, like at all, but that's fine. That's an easy fix. I'm just going to tap it a little bit till it is lined up in this direction. I'm actually going to check the other way too. The other way might actually be a little bit easier to see because I don't have to worry about the fact that this is tapered right here. And you remember how one of these fins had some issues with the taper, or that taper in it? This is the one. So while I am thinking about it, I'm just going to kind of sand right here in both directions. And I did, you can see there's a little bit that came off. That was the part that was the problem. All right. And in the process of doing so, I have misadjusted or maladjusted, whatever you want to call it. I have knocked loose the fin from where it's supposed to be. So that looks better. All right. I'm going to stand it up vertically while I get the next fin ready. And this is going to be somewhat repetitive, perhaps, but such is life. Getting that first spin on is usually the easiest of the whole lot for whatever reason, mostly because you usually don't have to deal with the other fins potentially flopping over. These ones might be a little bit harder to get on, but if for no other reason than they have less gluing surface area than the long diagonal main fins, right? Because they're much longer and actually a little bit, well, at the widest point, they're about the same width. So these have less purchase because there's only this much glue. So, it might be a little bit more difficult, but it really shouldn't be that big of a deal one way or the other. I think what I'm going to do this time is that I'm going to apply this next one. I'm not going to do it in sequential order going around the rocket. I'm going to add this one directly across from the fin that I already added. Partially because That way I can check for alignment maybe a little bit more easily, but I also am not going to be messing with, I'm not going to have a fin that's at a right angle trying to fall off the side. Now I am not going to put this down on the ground this time because I would be bumping the fin that is not set. So I'm going to have to do this kind of hanging out in the air. Just going to make sure that I have the back point nice and aligned. And as mentioned, this is somewhat difficult to see because these etchings are, well, they're not very easy to see, is the bottom line here, for better or for worse. If you decide that you have a real problem with this, you could certainly always break out a ruler and a pencil and mark over top of them if you really, really wanted to. I don't think it's that bad, personally, but I could see wanting to do that, honestly. It is mildly irritating. So, that's probably good enough. And again, this is not aligned. Adjust it from this end first. And then check this direction. Now again, I really don't want to be bumping anything that's on the, putting this bottom fin on the ground because that one is still not dry. Also, I am somewhat concerned that I might have bumped that fin, so I'm going to just double check here quickly, but it looks fine. All right, 2 more. I have to say, this is, I really wish that, I appreciate not having to cut these out and sand them and all that stuff, but the fact that I'm going to have to prepare them like from scratch almost after I've applied them is somewhat irritating because I have not sanded these in any meaningful way except for sanding the curves into them. So the grain here is pretty grainy. So after everything is attached and dried, then really dried too, by the way, I'm going to have to sand these, then put on the wood fill, then put on the sealer. That's probably going to have to happen twice, I think. Some of the more recent builds that I've done, I've only put one coat of the wood fill in it, and I haven't been as pleased with the results as probably I could have been, but I tend to cut corners there, which probably I shouldn't. The finish definitely benefits from having multiple layers of wood fill. Okay. This one I can at least put on the ground here because there's nothing, I haven't attached a new fin. Okay, so getting my back alignment right. Okay, that looks pretty good. The longer you hold it here too, the easier the whole process is going to get because you're giving it more of a chance to firm up before you go doing anything else. So good 30 seconds holding the fin before you let it go. It's probably the amount of time. Now, another thing to remember here too is the instructions suggested that I should probably sand right where the etchings are on the tube, and I didn't do that. I didn't do that because I didn't want to make it harder to find those etching marks, and I also figured that the amount of benefit from getting the non-glassy part of the tube probably wasn't worth it. So far, I haven't had any real issues with the messiness of the cleanness of the glassy covering on this being an issue. Again, of course, I need to check my alignment. It is not aligned. And the other direction as well. That's pretty good. Now I have to say, this one does not really appear to be completely in line with the fin in front of it, which is kind of problematic. The other two seem pretty good, but this one seems a little bit too far this way. I'm not sure I want to actually do anything about that. Just checking alignment. It doesn't, I mean, it's really hard to tell from this direction. And the fins themselves appear generally aligned, but I mean, it does look like it should be a little over this direction. The question is, do I want to try to fix that? And honestly, I don't. Well, I probably should try it, so I'm just going to wiggle it here a little bit and try to get it where I think it belongs. That looks better. Naturally, of course, I moved it, so I need to check the alignment. And it actually stayed pretty well aligned here. That looks better. Let's see if I can't mop up some of the glue here and see if there's any indication as to where it ought to be. Because again, this is the problem with those etchings. I can't see them at all. It's possible that this one is misaligned, or it's possible this one is misaligned, or they could both be misaligned. I can't really tell, so I'm just going to have to eyeball it at this point. So we'll say that one's probably good enough. All right. Now when I adjusted that last fin, I got rid of a good amount of the glue. Some of it anyway. So that fin is going to be weaker, at least for the time being. So I'm going to have to be extra careful that I don't jostle it when I'm attaching this last one. So hopefully that will be a non-issue. Here's hoping, anyway. All right. Incidentally, the next step I think that I'm going to take is I'm going to put the launch lugs on. That seems like a good next step. And there's one other little bit of decoration that needs to be done as well. But actually, I think probably the most intelligent thing I could do here is to let these fins dry thoroughly before I do either of those two things. There are, I would call them decorative elements that are going to go right next to the main fins. But I don't want to really mess with any of that stuff. I mean, I could certainly attach stuff here. These are very dry. But I think the best bet is to just let everything set up, at least for the time being. It's kind of hard to see right here. I'm not completely convinced that I got this one exactly where it ought to be either, so I might need to make some minor adjustments here, just like I did with the previous one. The important thing here, though, is that the fins are consistent with each other. So it would be nice for these two to be at a perfect 180 degree straight line, the ones that are directly across from each other. But more important than that, I want the front fin and the back fin to be aligned with each other. So that's what I'm going to be looking for here. All right. Seem to, actually remember I put the tissue in the front here. Okay. Did not brush off all of the excess glue on some of these, so let's quickly make sure I get that. I'm going to be applying fillets here, but still. All right, that is not even close. There we go. Alignment's fine that way. Again, do not touch the ground. That's pretty good. All right, let's check for fins being in alignment this way. They look pretty good. All right, one last check. All right, that ought to do it for the time being. I'm going to set this vertically like so, and I'm going to let it thoroughly dry. One last thing I suppose I should check is to make sure that the back fins are all right in alignment with the end of the wood, which they all are, the tube, which they all seem to be. So that's probably about as good as things are going to get for the time being. So in the next video, I need to apply these little decorative bits to the main fins, and I need to apply launch lugs. So a bit more construction, and then we should be ready for finishing. Very exciting. All right, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.